What's up everyone, it's Alex the Sega Guru here, and we've got some awesome news here of Splatterhouse being ported to the Sega Genesis / Sega Mega Drive, a game that some of us really didn't actually realise was never on the system itself. It came to various systems, obviously the arcade, TurboGrafx 16, even the Towns Marty, but weirdly never came to the Sega Genesis. So obviously we all know the game was developed and published by Namco in 1998, released obviously in Japan of November 1998. This horror game that has captivated a lot of people's imagination across the years, again not realising it was never released on this system. Now the interesting thing is the game actually comes with a cracktro. So who's behind the port? So obviously the team behind this is solo developer Chris from Monster Bath Games, based in Nova Scotia in Canada. I could be wrong, who's also well known for releasing the games Death Wish Enforcers Special Edition, Guardgrave, Super Battle Princess Madeline, and also currently working on Legend of the Cursed Blade. So you're probably asking me what made them, or what made him, want to port the original Splatterhouse to the Genesis? And his response was, well, that's a pretty darn good question. I don't really know. I wanted to try out the Scorpion engine, and I wanted a fairly simple game to port that was graphically intense but light on AI. If you don't know, the Scorpion engine essentially, it's an engine that is also used on the Amiga to create brand new titles and also work on a lot of different ports. So it's actually quite easy to use. Obviously, if you're a developer, that is, I wouldn't have a clue. Anyway, the point of me learning Scorpion Engine is to try and port my own games using it. So other ports may happen, maybe Black Tiger, and or a game that I know we've already started to see be worked on the system but has gone quiet for some time, Robocop, which I would absolutely love to see. But more than likely, I'd try and do one of my own games instead, which I think is quite honourable. So I guess the porting process is to also learn along the way, and learn the kind of complexities and pitfalls of using the Scorpion engine. I'm liking the simplicity of Scorpion engine. While you need some coding knowledge and also need to know how gaming logic works, it's a fairly simple to pick up and try for a seasoned developer. The biggest difficulties so far though are mostly from an artist's point of view, taking an arcade game with hundreds of colours on screen at once down to 61, maybe 63 max. And coming from the artist's point of view, a lot of this ruins the mood of essentially a setting, so you have to be careful with how you handle it, which is absolutely quite admirable. The Genesis / Mega Drive palette is very, very bright. There's no soft tones to it. And a game like Splatterhouse uses a lot of soft, dark tones that don't exist in the Genesis' palette. You essentially end up compromising with a lot of colours, or a brighter version of the palette in some cases. I've also been making changes to background assets, something more suited in the Genesis colour palette in some areas, or new details to make the backgrounds a little less repetitive, in some areas. You'll see it more when I do a lot of the later levels. The walls are very bare in the buildings for a place full of rotting corpses on the floor, with guts everywhere and monsters around every corner. You'd expect there to be some gore on the wall or damage, which, when you think about it, absolutely makes sense. So I'll be adding little bits and pieces like that as I go. Now the other bit that people may want to probably see is the difference between, for example, the TurboGrafx 16 version and the Sega Genesis port we're seeing right here. And side by side you can clearly see the difference, mainly through the way it kind of looks visually. You can't deny the Sega Genesis version is certainly more superior. And since the Scorpion engine is fairly new, there isn't a lot of documentation yet, so I find myself nagging for help more than I'd like when something isn't immediately obvious to me. I'm also worried about the ROM size getting fairly big pretty quickly. I don't think there's any form of compression for art, in Scorpion Engine yet, so aside of the music and sound being fairly compressed already, I'm just finishing up the second level and sitting around 1.4 meg of ROM, which is almost 3 times the size of the PC Engine version already. So that's it. That's a rundown of the progress so far. I hope you guys like this. I'm going to leave the gameplay footage of the game so you can see as it is at the moment, including audio and everything. Let's take a look at this. Splatterhouse for the Sega Genesis. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe. As well as that, you can also back the channel on Patreon. QR code is down below. But obviously you can check out this video, you can also check out that video. And on that note, it's Al signing out.